At number 10, hidden. So jinn, sometimes spelled with a D at the beginning of the word, well, they're supernatural and scary creatures. They were made by God, just like humans, and there is an air of mystery surrounding the entire world of the jinn, who they are, what they do. And as a matter of fact, the literal meaning of the Arabic word jinn, it means hidden or concealed. So not just that they are hidden and can't be seen with the naked eye, but things about them like their abilities, how they live, where they are, etc. are still a mystery. Although there is some information about what life is like for a jinn, a lot of it is still mystery. They literally could be anywhere, doing anything. What was that? Was that a jinn? Okay, I just have to catch my breath there. Moving on to number 9. Jinn, they live for a long time. So we established that jinns, they live in the world and they're concealed from our eyes, and they live in a different dimension, if you want to call it that, and they also do follow a different timeline. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, according to my research, the jinn, unlike humans, they can live for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, perhaps even millions of years at this point. So like, this means that they would most likely be smarter than us, and you know, they would have a lot of time to accumulate knowledge and life experiences. Like we as humans, for instance, would live, let's say, about 80 years or so, and we think we're smart. But imagine living thousands of years, having thousands of years of knowledge in your brain. Yeah, would definitely make the jinn a very scary opponent. I'll talk more about that later on in this video though, so keep on watching. But for number 8, there are 3 main types of jinn. They take many different shapes and forms, and they have other names and types. And one source, a hadith narrated by Ibn Masud, it said that there are 3 main types of jinn: those who fly, and those who appear in the form of dogs and snakes. And the 3rd kind is one that flies. So they're full of surprises, right? And I think what makes this so scary is that, you know, we as humans, there's like one type, and we can't really fly without the help of technology, but there's no escaping a jinn. So if you even fly with an airplane, the jinn can fly and get you. If you try to avoid a jinn, well, there's nowhere that you can run and go, because they can take on the form of an animal, let's say, and you may just run into it and you don't even know that's a jinn. That is scary. Well, number 7 brings us the Qareen. So you guys know that our phones listen to us, right? Like, you could be talking about buying a new car with a friend, and all of a sudden, boom, you're on Facebook or Instagram and you see ads about cars and deals for new cars and all of that, and you're thinking like, oh wow, this is interesting. Also, our phones track our location. But still, in many ways, we can still protect our privacy from companies and the government and from other people. Just turn off the phone, or, you know, don't use one. But there's actually no privacy at all when it comes to a type of jinn called Qareen. These guys are on another level. Qareen is a type of evil jinn that stays with a human being all the time. They're literally like assigned to humans, and they know each and everything that a person does. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they encourage you to do bad things. So not only are they literally spying on you, but they have the audacity to make your life worse by, you know, trying to instigate you in doing bad stuff. Number 6 brings us jinns being powerful. So they're physically strong and capable of moving heavy objects almost instantaneously from one place to another. And in some cases, jinn powers, they can be controlled much like humans, and the person who is controlling the jinn's power, well, they can use them for various different beneficial reasons. Like, one example is King Solomon, according to Islamic texts, who made the jinn build the Masjid al-Aqsa, also known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They can travel large distances quickly, and of course they can fly through the air like I mentioned earlier. But outside of being physically strong and able to have external influences on humans, jinns also have the power to penetrate a person's subconsciousness, and they can almost force humans to do things and feel experiences. This type of phenomenon is called jinn possession. Halfway in at number 5, jinn are very crafty. I touched on this at the beginning of the video, but jinns are creatures with great intelligence. Like, you know, they live forever, they're accumulating a lot of information and learning a lot. So they can lie, they can give false information, they can even play tricks on people. So good luck trying to outsmart a jinn. In many cases, it would be like a toddler competing with a 30-year-old scientist on a chemistry exam. Like, there is no match when it comes to the humans and the jinn's intellect when you put them side by side. It takes a lot of spiritual strength and knowledge and patience to control a jinn. And how to control a jinn still remains a very tricky question, because many people have actually tried to control jinns, but they were not successful, and in some cases they lost their mental health and even lost their lives in the process. So trying to control a jinn is definitely something that's not recommended. Number 4 brings us Ifrit. Ifrit, they are sometimes in different cultures worshipped as gods, but they are not a god. Ifrit is just one type of powerful and evil jinn. The Ifrit is recognized as the spirit of the dead people, and especially in European culture, Ifrit is mostly living underground, so they may marry each other and they have their own societies and everything. And what's also pretty scary is that they can marry humans as well. There are many popular tales that depict an enormous winged creature of smoke, whether in the male form or female form, but that's the typical depiction of an Ifrit jinn. While ordinary weapons and forces have no power over them, it's believed that they are actually susceptible to magic, which humans can use to kill them or even capture them. But again, yeah, this is an Ifrit we're talking about. The odds of capturing one and controlling one, very slim. Number 3, let's talk about mental health when it comes to jinn. Some Muslim people believe that jinn can be the cause of mental health problems, and also jinn can be the source of having people see visions and hearing voices, as well as other undesired influences. Researchers in the Netherlands have found that up to 80% of Islamic people with a diagnosis of psychosis consider it to be the result of a jinn. Now, Western medical practitioners, they often lack information about Islamic culture and religious beliefs. So of course that can make Muslims reluctant to seek any sort of medical advice when it comes to matters like this. But there is some interesting research that suggests that in some Muslim communities, medication and talking therapy for distressing voices is most effective when combined with traditional Islamic methods used to eliminate jinn influence on somebody. The scary fact at number 2 is that jinn target kids. This one is taken from an Islamic source, specifically the Hadith Sunan Abi Dawud 3733. And it says, "Gather your children when darkness spreads, or in the evening, for the jinn are abroad and seize them." So this can be viewed as a literal seizing or a spiritual seizing. Either way, keep your eye on the kids at nighttime because the jinn are out to get them. And we end this episode off at number 1, the jinn hold grudges. Jinn are not all evil. According to the 1001 Nights, in some of its tales, jinn actually grant wishes to people, and they also help people who are in need. But be careful though, not all jinn are so kind. In the tale of the merchant and the jinni, for example, a merchant is face to face with a powerful and evil jinn who wants to take his life because the merchant accidentally tossed a pit of a date and it hit and killed the jinn's invisible son. Well, invisible to the merchant, it was an accident, right? So although the merchant is able to remain alive, others may not have been so lucky. So be careful what you throw away. It just might harm a jinn unsuspectingly and leading to a very scary outcome. Start off fact number 10. Who is the devil in Islam anyways? Well, the Arabic term shaitan means adversary, and you know, it's like the English word Satan, and it's used in the Quran in both the singular as well as the plural, and it's often interchangeable with Iblis, who is considered to be a particular Satan or devil That's like the proper name for him. And because of the disobedience that Iblis portrayed to God, God ejected him from having access to heaven and among the angels and all of that. And we're gonna get a lot more into that in this episode. But this particular figure, Iblis, he tempts Adam and Eve to disobey God. And in that story, he's referred to as Shaitan. Also, sometimes he's referred to as a jinn, giving rise to a lot of different understanding and interpretation about the nature of Satan, aka Iblis, like what's really going on here. But by the way, we're gonna also get more into that later in this episode. But that's just an introduction of who the devil is inside the religion of Islam. Let's move on now to fact number 9. Iblis, as he's called, was also part of God's creation. You can find that in the Quran, Surah 15, verses 27. And it explains that before God created man out of clay from the earth, he created the jinn race. Yeah, specifically it says the jinn race was created from the fire of the Simum. And Simum it's like a desert sandstorm kind of wind. So the idea that the jinn were created by God is also found in the Quran. You can find that in Surah 6 verses 100 and Surah 55 verses 15. Now for Iblis, he was created before Adam and Eve, and he was also present at the time of Adam's creation. And you can find that in Surah 15 verses 28 to 31. However, he wasn't present at the time that the heavens were created. Moving on now to fact number 8. So in the religion of Islam, Iblis, aka the devil, isn't the originator and creator of evil in the world. As he fulfills the role as being Satan, he's simply seen as a tempter who really likes to take advantage of the weakness of humanity, as well as the self-centeredness, the ego, all of that, and really tries to lead people to the path away from God. Next thing that I want to point out is though that angels, they are seen in the religion of Islam as being super loyal to God, and they bowed down to Adam when God told them to do so, but Iblis did not. So this brought up the question of Iblis, like, was he one of the angels or not? Yeah, and this is a pretty interesting point because this is where a lot of Islamic scholars actually disagree. But not just scholars, also Islamic commentators as well. They tend to disagree on this point. Not all of them, but just there's a large amount of them. Now the Quran identifies Iblis as a jinn in Surah 18 verses 50. So some hold the view that the jinn are a type of angel though. Now Tabari, citing the companion Ibn Abbas, he wrote this: Iblis was one of a group of angels called Al-Hin, where the term jinn comes from. They were created of fire. But although there is differences of views about the nature of Iblis, most Muslims do agree that he is a jinn, and jinn is completely separate from the class of angels. Also, according to Islamic traditions, Iblis is known by many different names and titles, such as Abu Mura, which is father of bitterness, and there's Adu Allah, meaning the enemy of God, and Abu al-Harith, which is the father of the plowman. In the Quran, there are actually 7 different accounts about the hatred between Satan and humans, and this all resulted from his refusal to obey God and bow down to Adam. Those references are Surah 2 verses 30 to 39, Surah 11 verses 11 to 25, Surah 15 verses 26 to 48, Surah 17 verses 61 to 65, Surah 18 verses 50 to 53, Surah 20 verses 115 to 126, and Surah 38 verses 71 to 88. All these accounts, by the way, they differ in length and the details that are included in each of them. Also, Iblis, the devil, yeah, very bad guy. He vows to take revenge by misleading humans. This is referenced in the Quran, Surah 15 verses 39 and 38 verses 82. Because thou hast thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on the straight way. Then I will assault them from before them and behind them, from their right and their left. Nor wilt thou find in most of them gratitude for your mercies. This, by the way, was taken from Surah 7 verses 16 to 17. Now, although Iblis is often compared to the devil in Christian theology, in Islam, the idea is rejected that Satan is an opponent of God, and also it is opposed that there is some sort of struggle between God and the devil. So Iblis might either be regarded as the most monotheist or the greatest sinner ever. And it's also believed that Iblis did not become an unbeliever because of his disobedience, but because of attributing injustice to God by saying that the command to bow down before Adam was completely inappropriate. There's also no sign of any revolt in heaven or war in terms of like all the angels fighting in the Quran. That's not found there like it's found in the Bible. And it doesn't mention that the devil is trying to take God's throne in the religion of Islam at all. Now, according to certain Islamic traditions, the supernatural being named Azazel, I've heard also pronounced Azazel, is by the way viewed as the original name for Iblis, the devil or Satan. And this being was cast down to earth when he refused to bow down before God's creation, Adam. Once he was cast down, Azazel, whose name then became Iblis, spoke through a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit. So Iblis is also considered as the leader of those angels who fought the earthly jinn as well. And in terms of this traditional belief, it kind of falls more in line with the Christian view of Satan. Of course, there are some variations though, but this is not the most popular Islamic view, although it does exist in the religion. And finally, the fact I want to end off on is Satan is not just seen as an enemy or adversary in the religion of Islam, but is also seen as the worst of all enemies of human beings. In the Quran, Surah 2, verses 208, it says, "O you who believe, you shall embrace total submission. Do not follow the steps of Satan, for he is your most ardent enemy." Also in the Quran, Surah 6, verses 142, it says, "Some livestock supply you with transportation as well as bedding materials. Eat from God's provisions to you, and do not follow the steps of Satan. He is your most ardent enemy."
So starting at number 10, here we have the Nephilim. Goliath wasn't the only giant that was mentioned in the Bible. Possibly he was the descendant of an entire race of giants known as the Nephilim. Theologians, however, they have various different beliefs about exactly who the Nephilim were. For example, some believe that they were the children of angels who had children with human women, but others teach that they were simply the descendants of Cain. Either way, the Nephilim were huge and strong creatures that looked to oppose the ways of God, and due to their size, they were feared by most people. Next up at number 9, we look at the Jinn. The Jinn are beings that live in a parallel universe to humans. According to Islamic texts like the Quran, they are made out of smokeless fire, and they were given free will by God, so they can either do good or they can do evil. But most jinn are evil, and that's why they have a reputation of being an evil race entirely. There are various types and classes of jinn. Some can shapeshift and fly, as well as interact with humans by calling out to them while still remaining invisible. They can even possess a human being and cause them to do all manner of evil things. Let's look at Azazel next. The Book of Enoch links Azazel to the biblical story of the fallen angels. Azazel is one of the leaders of the class of angels known as the Watchers during a time before the global flood of Prophet Noah. He taught people warfare and how to make swords and how to make armor, as well as he taught women the art of deception through makeup. Azazel also taught witchcraft to the people, and he was a leader in corrupting the ways of humans so that they can go away from the path of God. Now Azazel is bound and chained in a fixed location until the day of judgment. All right, we're gonna go to the Eastern religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, and Sikhism for this one. And here we find Preta. Pretas, they're actually a type of being, and people who are greedy or jealous in this life, they become cursed by karma and they return to the world, but then they become filled with this constant painful anger and thirst that can't be satisfied at all. So no matter how much they eat or they drink, Pretas, they are never satisfied. Either they can't find food and drink, or they can't even consume it when they find it. And because of this, Pretas are often depicted as just pretty much skin and bone, as if they were living mummies. Yeah, very scary. No human being wants to have a curse like that put on them. Next up, let's look at succubus. A succubus is a demon in a female form, and succubuses are very popular in Wicca as well as other modern occult groups. Succubus show up in dreams, and they take on the figure of a woman in order to seduce men, typically through very intimate actions. They've also been known to cause sleep paralysis as well as trigger wet dreams. According to religious traditions, having these repeated intimate relations with succubus, it can result in the decline of your health as well as even cause death. Continuing this episode now, at number 5, we have the Pishacha. Pishachas are flesh-eating demons in Buddhist and Hindu mythology. Pishacha is the spirit of a person who committed fraud as well as adultery or other similar criminal acts. And they have a dark complexion with bulging veins and purple eyes. When it comes to their powers, well, they can shapeshift as well as they can possess human beings. And that causes a lot of illness and abnormalities inside of people. They can also remain invisible and it can appear to people whenever they want. Jingtian is at number 4. Now, seeing this creature honestly would be straight up creepy. He's from Chinese folk religion and mythology. Jingtian is a giant warrior who served under the legendary Emperor Yan. When Emperor Yan was defeated by the Yellow Emperor, Jingtian challenged the Yellow Emperor to a fight, and Jingtian ended up losing his head in that fight. Surprisingly, instead of dying, Jingtian lived and he continued to look for his head. Well, not really look, but he was in search of his head. Jingtian, he ended up giving up after some time and he started growing a new face actually. So his nipples are his eyes and his belly button is his mouth. He's depicted as a headless giant with a face on his body who rages against the gods. Number 3 brings us to the ghoul. A ghoul is a demonic being believed to inhabit burial grounds as well as other places that are deserted. Now, in ancient Arabic folklore, ghouls are said to be the offspring of Iblis, who is the devil in Islam, and ghouls are able to change their form. But here's the thing with them, they aren't able to change the appearance of their feet, which look like donkey hooves. Ghouls live in places like the desert, and they often disguise themselves as women to lure travelers and eventually eat them. Next up, let's look at Azhi-Dahaka. In Zoroastrianism, Azhi-Dahaka has been described as having 6 eyes, 3 mouths, and 3 heads. He knows all of the sins that people can commit in the world, and whenever he is wounded, he doesn't bleed blood, he bleeds snakes and rats and various insects. According to Zoroastrian prophecy, he's going to be the one that eats the world's livestock, as well as he's going to eat a third of humanity during the end times. And that brings us to number 1 on this list, Satan, the greatest enemy of God and creation. He is most commonly referred to in the Bible as the devil or Satan, among other names. He is also commonly depicted as a fallen angel. Satan is a transliteration of the Hebrew word which means adversary or opponent, and Iblis in Islam is the personal name of the devil. The main characteristics of Satan, aside from his extreme pride and arrogance, is his ability to put evil suggestions into the minds of men and women. According to the Bible, in the book of John, Jesus describes the devil by saying this: "He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Also, all demons and fallen creatures aim to do his bidding. So it's no surprise that the being who inspires all other evil acts, including murder, pathological lying, causing torture and torment, as well as every other evil thing, would be number 1 on this list.
All right, up at number 10, we have Ravana. Ravana was a powerful and evil demon king with 20 hands and 10 heads. He was considered the most dreadful creature of the universe, but was one of the very intellectual demons who mastered all the holy scripts of Hindu mythology. He perished at the hands of Rama for abducting Rama's wife, Sita, to marry her. When Lord Rama terminated Ravana, he was known as one of the longest living demons. Up next, we have Mahishasur. Mahishasur was a demon king who inherited a buffalo's body with the upper body of a human. He was a devotee of Lord Brahma and eventually got a blessing from him that no man would ever be able to kill him and that only a woman could kill him. Mahishasur was extremely powerful, and his pride led to his downfall. Believing that he would be immortal and that no woman would be able to match his strength, he started a great war. However, the prophecy was fulfilled when Mahishasur perished at the hands of a woman, Madurga, who fought him to stop the war he had created. All right, up next we have Hiranyakshipu. Hiranyakshipu was the egoistic demon king. He wanted his people to praise him as a god and considered himself to be the center of the world. He believed he was the creator of the universe with uncontrollable supreme power. While his entire kingdom worshipped him, his own son Prahlad refused to worship him as the Lord and instead was devoted to Lord Vishnu. Out of jealousy, Hiranyakshipu attempted many times to end the life of his son, but was unsuccessful. Seeing this, Lord Narsimha, or a form of Lord Vishnu, tore apart the demon Hiranyakshipu and destroyed him. Moving on to the story of Mahabali. Now, not every demon in Hindu mythology was completely evil. Mahabali is an example of one of the more generous demon kings. Everyone in his kingdom was happy under his rule, and he was completely devoted to the Lord. Once a Vamana came to his kingdom and asked the demon king to give him a piece of land just big enough to be covered by his footsteps. Now, secretly, it was Lord Vishnu disguised as Vamana. Generous as he was, Mahabali promised to fulfill the wish of Vamana. And upon hearing this promise, Vamana grew so big that one of his footsteps covered the entire world, and Mahabali came to know that Vamana was really Lord Vishnu. To seek blessings from the Lord, Mahabali asked Vamana to put the next footprint on his forehead. But of course, as a result of receiving the Lord's giant footstep on his forehead, Mahabali perished. Up at number 6, we have the story of Raktabija. Raktabija was one of the strongest demons who had a very unique blessing that if even one drop of his blood fell on the ground, from that same drop, a duplicate of him would be born. This meant that it was very difficult to defeat or terminate Raktabija, so no one dared to challenge him. Every time Raktabija's duplicate was formed, his power would increase. Now, in a battle with the goddess Durga, Raktabija's blood spilled to the ground and thousands of Raktabija were born. Eventually, the Hindu goddess Kali came forward and pierced the demon, making sure to drink every drop of blood that spilled before it could ever hit the ground, and in essence, terminating him. Now, up at the halfway point in today's video at number 5, we have Narakasura. Narakasura was a demon king ruler disliked by his people because he tortured them. He had once kidnapped around 1,600 women only to torment them for his own pleasure. Soon his people could no longer take the torture and collectively approached the supreme being Krishna for help. Krishna promised that he would fight and terminate the demon king on their behalf. However, Narakasura's life could only end at the hands of a woman. So Krishna and his wife fought the battle against Narakasura, emerging victoriously and destroying Narakasura. And now we come to the story of Kumbhakaran. Hindu demon Kumbhakarna, or the sleeping giant, had an enormous body and was blessed with the ability to sleep for months. But once asleep, waking him was considered tremendously difficult. His brother Ravana, who was also a powerful demon, had kidnapped Rama's wife to marry her. When war broke out between the two, Ravana needed his brother's help to win the war. To wake him from a deep sleep, Ravana had 1,000 elephants walk over Kumbhakaran, waking him in time for battle. Now, Kumbhakaran knew that his brother was doing wrong, and for that, he tried to convince him to stop, but Ravana would not listen. Out of loyalty, Kumbhakaran fought against Rama for his brother. He destroyed most of Rama's army in the battle, but eventually perished at the hands of Rama. Up next at number 3, we have the story of Tarakasura. Tarakasura was an evil demon king who defeated his challengers and forced them to become his servants. He praised the gods and eventually received their blessings. However, he began to misuse his power and many innocent perished at his hands. As per his blessing from the gods, Tarakasura could only be defeated by the son of Lord Shiva, but at the time, Shiva had no children. However, after Shiva's marriage to Parvati, Kartikeya was born. Kartikeya then fought Tarakasura and destroyed him and all of his brothers. Moving on to the story of Surpanaka. Surpanaka was a wicked demoness and the sister of the demon king Ravana. She was considered very ugly and married to Dushtabudi. Dushtabudi was terribly greedy and wanted Ravana's kingdom. When Ravana heard about his intentions, he destroyed Dushtabudi, leaving Surpanaka a widow. A few years later, she saw Lakshmana and Rama roaming around the forest. She was attracted to them and of course wanted to marry them. However, both of them declined her proposal and she became angry. To try and win their love, she attempted to attack Sita, the wife of Rama, and the sister-in-law of Lakshmana. Because of this, Lakshmana chopped off her nose and Rama declared a battle against her. In the end, Rama emerged victoriously and Surpanaka left alone and in tears. And up at number 1, perhaps one of the most evil demons that I found was Putna. Lord Krishna appeared as a supreme personality on earth to destroy all the demons and protect his devotees. Putna was the demoness who practiced the art of taking the lives of infants through black magic. One day, Putna dressed herself as a beautiful girl and entered the infant Krishna's house to end his life. When Putna entered the room, she took Krishna onto her lap. The wicked demoness had smeared poison on her nipple and pushed it into his mouth, expecting him to die as she fed him. However, her plan failed, and instead, the infant Krishna sucked the life out of her. Eventually, the demoness returned to her normal form and perished, screaming in pain as her body extended up to 12 miles, crashing into trees and the village houses.